This is a crazy game between Magnus Carlsen and Vladimir Kramnik, played in 2008. It's called Hedgehog Day. Apparently, either it was played on Hedgehog Day. Magnus Carlsen is 27.33 and Vladimir Kramnik is 27.99. These guys were both world champion at some point. Magnus Carlsen was for a long time, and then he decided not to play because he doesn't like the format. Vladimir Kramnik, playing white, plays knight f3. We have knight c6 here. Knight f3, knight f6, and now c4. Magnus decides to play e6, and we have knight to c3 and c5 now. Finally pushing here. I think you can either play e4 here, or you can play something like this, and because you can't really play both, but e5 I think I would rather play, but you do lose a pawn immediately, so you'd have to play d6 then e5, but I like opening the center a bit more. Magnus decides to open this side of the board, playing b6, which is quite an odd move. It's like top 4 on the computer, but it kind of just open up your bishop because you pretty much know he's going to castle this way, or at least put this bishop here, and he kind of weakened this by playing here, so Magnus kind of knows he's not going to castle this way. So either going to castle this way or not really castle at all, and he ends up castling that way. They both fianchetto the bishops, and we have bishop e7 by Magnus, d4, striking in the center by Kramnik, pawn takes, queen takes, and now d6, just defended by the bishop. This is defended, and maybe the knight comes here to defend this knight. We have rook to d1, the top move of the computer, and now pawn a6 and knight to g5, jumping into the side of the board. And this could get a little bit scary for Magnus. We have bishop takes, king takes the bishop back, and now knight jumps onto c6, attacking the queen, but it is undefended. So we have queen to f4 now, and the castles, and knight to e4. Knight drops back, and this attack is kind of crazy. There's nothing, but if Magnus makes one wrong move, Kramnik could completely destroy him. He pushes this pawn forwards, ready to fianchetto this bishop, and try to create an attack here, and Magnus just pushes his rook forwards. It's called the rook lift. It's defending this bishop, so I honestly don't know the idea of rook a7. It looks like a crazy stupid move, but apparently it's really good. So we have bishop to b2 and rook to d7 now, and that's kind of the idea. Ready to push this pawn forwards, and it'll be defended by the rook and the queen now. So we have rook to c1 and knight to c7, putting even more pressure on this square with the queen, the rook, and the knight now. The knight drops back because Kramnik realizes he has no attack and he just has to reroute his pieces. We have pawn to f5 now, attacking this knight, and this knight has to run away. So Kramnik had a crazy attack and he just dropped both of his knights back. So that's not the best idea for him, and Magnus completely leaves his king vulnerable. But it doesn't matter because his pieces are placed so nicely that he can do this. Kramnik runs back. He had his queen here, his knight here, and his knight here, and he moved them all back. And Magnus, it looks like he's weak, but actually his position's very good. And he pushes his pawns even further. It's not overextending because even after you play here, black can just defend it. So there's really nothing that you can do. Kramnik plays the top move, knight to e1. Maybe he's cheating. We have bishop to g5, attacking the queen. If the queen takes back, so obviously you can't take it. He blocks with the pawn, and now we have rook to f7, and king drops back to g1, saying, do something. Play something against me. We have knight dropping back to e7, and Magnus is just rerouting the knight to a better square. So is Kramnik. Magnus keeps on jumping the knight up. Kramnik does as well. And we have queen to g8 now, and queen to c3. Threatening this knight now. Not really, because it's kind of defended by everything, but now it's only defended by the bishop. So if you play something like knight here, actually that wouldn't work because then knight takes and it's defending the rook. But I don't know, maybe there's something good for Kramnik. I don't see it. We have b4 by Kramnik trying to attack this knight, and Magnus jumps in with his knight. It's now outposted, not really, but it's on a nice square. It's attacking the queen. We have queen going to b3, rook going back to e7, and Kramnik goes to a4 with his queen, attacking this loose knight, but he jumps it into the board, and Magnus has some nice ideas here. This pawn is hanging, and Kramnik takes it, but that's not the best idea. You can see the analysis doesn't really like it that much, and Magnus is doing pretty well here. He decides not to take the next pawn, because then after... Oh, wait, no. Wait, so they can trade off queens here. That's exactly what happens. They trade off queens. Now we have rook takes a2, rook to c8, king forwards, and Magnus is really not in any danger. Even though this rook's all the way back here, this bishop was attacked, it got defended, and we have bishop dropping back to f6. I don't know why this isn't hanging. After, oh, you take back with the knight and it's defending. Because if you take with the rook, then you take here and you're completely winning. So, yeah, so you just have to take with the knight, and it looks pretty equal. I guess that's the reason then. We have bishop dropping back to f6 instead of taking, which he had the option of doing. Knight takes, pawn takes. Interesting, opening up this rook for white, but they are 2700, so he probably had it calculated. We have rook takes c2, and now rook goes to a7. King goes to g2, and knight drops back to g5. We have rook to d6, and pawn forwards. Magnus is a master of endgames. He has this bishop targeted by literally everything. If you take here, I take here, and I'm pretty much completely winning. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong move. But king takes f6, and you're getting targeted, you're defended, and this knight is pretty far on the board. And I think, no, Magnus is not up a pawn, but I think his pawn structure is better because these are doubled, and these are doubled, but you can't push these guys, and you can push these guys. So it's a little bit better for Magnus here, and the king drops back, rook goes to a1, and it's actually a lot better for Magnus. He just has to keep on pressing and keep on going until Kramnik makes a big mistake. He's down about 3 points if Magnus plays knight to f3, and that's not what happens, so it's almost back to equal, -2, so Magnus is still winning. Rook drops to d1, the best move. He takes the pawn. We have knight to g2, pawn taken again. Both these pawns are gone. This is a passed pawn, and Magnus should be cleanly winning this. We have knight to f4, rook goes to c5, trying to trade off these rooks, and it would be a completely winning endgame. We have rook to b2, trying to attack this pawn and not get the rooks traded off. Now pawn forwards, defended by the rook now, and king drops back to f1. We have rook to c7, and rook drops back to b1, rook b7, and now rook b4, stopping this, and now after rook to c4, this pawn is getting pushed no matter what you do. He drops the rook back, we have pawn forwards, rooks are both attacking this pawn now, but there's nothing he can do. After knight f3, the move that he needed to find earlier is finally found. He's going to take this pawn, and the game's pretty much going to be over. The king jumps here, defends the pawn, but now rook d7, and you can take this pawn, but if you take the pawn, it doesn't work out for you. There's nothing Kramnik can really do. He was thinking in his head at this point, he's like, this guy's got a computer on him. He's got a computer. He plays h3. We have e5, and knight drops back to e2. Rook d2, an amazing move. If you take, I take back, and I'm attacking your rook, and my pawn is still defended. So there's nothing you can really do. He takes the pawn takes back, rook takes, trades off the rooks, and knight takes back. Rook goes to b2, out of danger of the knight, and now knight jumps back to f3, and Kramnik is completely lost here. There's nothing he can really do. This knight can't really go anywhere. These are the only squares the knight can go to without getting captured on the next move, and those are pretty terrible squares. We have pawn forwards, king back to g2. He's just moving it back and forth at this point, and after rook to c2, if you take my pawn, that's no good because rook takes e2, you lose your knight, and Carlsen ends up winning the game because Kramnik probably resigned in this position. I don't think he would lose on time here. If you take here, I take, sorry, not push, take back, and you can't stop it. I go here, check you, here, defend the prohibition square, and promote. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.